Hello, everyone. Welcome to the semi-finals of the Canadian Regional Championship here in Montreal. I'm Dom Harvey. I'm here with Mason Clark, and we are about to send someone to Worlds here. This is our top four match. The winner will go to the finals, where both finalists will get the Worlds invite. All of these players, of course, entire top 8 and 9th through 12th as well, have booked their ticket to the Pro Tour, and there's a lot of money and bragging rights. And interprovincial, grudges to be settled too. I think we established if Ray wins, I don't know how Iowa fits into the picture here, but we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, though, we have not only a grudge match but a rematch on our hands. Ray beat Jayson in what seemed like a win in at the end of the Swiss to claim that spot in the top 8. Jayson ended up making it anyway, and now they're going to do battle again. We'll see if Jayson can reverse history here.
Yeah. And mind you, in the win-in as well, Ray on a mold of 5 in the games, just sort of, very far behind, but sort of cut through the Demir mid-range deck. And that's sort of been what we've been talking about as the narrative all weekend, right, Dom? Is Demir mid-range is here to beat the non-cutter decks. It kind of beats up on everybody else and then hopes, have their draw line up well enough against cutter, when they need to play it. And Jayson beat cutter, I believe, in the top 8 match, playing for a top 4, but can Jayson do it again?
Yes, our top 8 bracket, each match had a cutter deck in it. So whoever you see in the semifinals, they had to beat, either they were the cutter deck that won in Ray's case, or they had to beat cutter together. So Jayson's done it once, and I imagine has done it many, many times over the weekend in order to get to this position, but now has to do it under the lights against one of the best players in the room, one of the best color players in the room, and someone who has already beat him just a few hours ago.
Yeah. Sleight of Hand takes a spell into Island Sleight of Hand. Playing around a card like Cut Down this turn, just having some setup. CFT shaking the head a little there.
Yeah, I wonder what the perceived mistake was.
Yeah, same. I wonder if we kept a card that's like maybe a 2 of or something and saw the other one, and it's like, ugh, that's the way of the world or something. Looks like stock up Draycatcher double a braid.
Yeah, I think, Ray not the type, I think, to get tilted or frustrated over something strange like that. But if they think they've made a silly blunder of some kind, then so sometimes that will show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of what could the blunder have been, I doubt it's like, oh, I really need a 3rd land to play stock up, whatever. I'll take, some other card over the land, cast second sleight of hand, and it's like, no land, But it's interesting.
Yeah, Jayson going to take the stock up. No 3rd land for Ray yet, but the moment that comes, stock up is going to improve their hand immensely. So hedges against that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to, play with the reveal cards face up here.
Yeah.
Makes it easier for all involved.
So what's the idea on taking a stock up here?
I think it's that, the game's going to go on a while. The moment that 3rd land comes, stock up, you now have to be the best 2 cards from that stock up as well as everything else. Whereas, everything else you can kind of 1-for-1, right? These are all either removal spells, bounce spells, or it's stuff like Draycatcher, which, okay, you'll go for the throat that or something. You'll find a way, right? Whereas the stock up is, uniquely good at what it does.
That makes sense to me.
So Ray is going to abrade the bat to get back the stock up. So we are back in that position. And Preacher of the Schism. So one of the cards really holding the fort down against all of these, red decks or blue-red decks is big. And it, can apply pressure while also helping to stabilize you. Just forces some really awkward exchanges. Even if they have Monstrous Rage, right? They can trample over it, but then Death Touch means they're still losing the creature and the rage as a result. So a really good defensive card. A little awkward sometimes if you're on the back foot against the 4 Floodmoors in Ray's deck. But Jayson is the one for now on the front foot, it seems.
Yeah. Looks like Ray's considering should I do something like stock up, try and find some more lands, maybe, bounce this Preacher somewhere along the next turn cycle. Or am I supposed to maybe play Draycatcher plus into the Floodmaw? Taking a second to really think through it. It is a pretty big turn. these sort of early developing turns when your mana is kind of tied up, and like, what am I going to play around? What am I going to play into this mine for my next couple of plays as well? Lots to consider here. All right, 2 mana, Draycatcher. And then I think looks like Ray's went to Flood Maw right away. Just get this creature off the board. No spell pierces to worry about. Now Jayson does have Enduring Curiosity and Gix's Command in hand, along with Cut Down.
Yeah, we saw the Gix's Command in their Swiss match really swing the game decisively, as Gix's Command has been doing for several years now. So cut down and Preacher. So a really nice turn from Jayson. It does have a window now to stock up though.
And immediately does it. All right. Plays land for turn, uses the land into the Flood Maw this Preacher. Get out of here. Pass the turn back. Now, normally we've been seeing the Flood Maw be pretty backbreaking when it's backed up with a card like Corey Steelcutter. You know, maybe it's triggering our Flurry, pushing a little damage, but here it's just been tying up Jayson's mana, and Jayson's been making all the land drops. Speak of the cutter. Stormchaser's Talent. That's going to trigger Flurry. Get an Otter. All right, and finally, this Preacher of the Schism is going to survive a turn cycle on the board.
Yeah, very little happened by only having the one red source along with those 3 mismatching islands.
Stun
Dragon can stun the Cutter Monk, and now could be a big Enduring Curiosity turn.
Yeah, I mean, we've been making our land drops every turn. This would be a great way to kind of stock up. We just had to go for the third as well. Not the best card ever, but, you know, not the worst. Attack. Preacher. Both players are at 20. An Otter jumping in front of Flood Pit Drowner. Jayson's going to take one from a pain land to play Enduring Curiosity before damage. Going to get a redraw here off the Preacher. Looks like another island. And a pass of the turn. This is going to remove the stun counter. Oh, drop some cards. Pick them up. I think there might be some confusion about lands. We're just recounting the last couple of turns. Very easy to happen. Especially after a long day of playing.
Trainer. Okay.
All right, that's a good one. We were close to off.
That a whiff.
Yeah.
Is that a whiff entirely?
I think that's a whiff entirely. We
Oh,
saw Trainer be a pivotal top deck for Ray versus Jayson in the Swiss rounds, a game-winning one. Here, a little whiffing one. Trainer giveth, Trainer taketh. As Enduring Curiosity is going to go into the enchantment mode, and we're going to attack for 2 with our new Corey Steelcuttered Monk. Knock Jayson down to 17.
yeah, a lot of things have added up to just go wrong for Ray in this game. And Jayson Shaw was solid, but not completely exceptional. But Jayson has just had the right things at the right moments and guided the game in a direction where it seems like he's in a commanding position.
Gix's command looks to be the lineup here. Kill everything. Make my guy super big.
Yeah. And Ray's reaching already, knowing what 5 mana being tapped means.
Yep. Now Preacher is also life linking the turn. We're going to get a vampire, get a draw from the Curiosity. Hits Kaito and has a land drop still for turn. Gonna play one and then pass the turn with go for the third up. Jayson's making this matchup look a lot easier than we did in the Swiss.
Yeah, you're saying this is favorite fit, is it?
Yeah. All right, Monster Mentor into stock up. Trigger, Corey Steelcutter. Top 5 here. What are we looking for, Dom?
Well, first line of duty is get rid of that preacher, or at least probably can't get it with damage, so reset it. Shrink it down to size a little bit. After that, another color would be nice, of course. Some of the usual stuff, like if Rafe gets some breathing room, another stock up into more spells would be fine. But I think that's the first priority, is just stop this preacher from being this insurmountable problem. Luckily, though, 4 Into the Floodmoor will help you do that more consistently. Burst Lightning or Torture Tower can never.
Looks like we're asking cards in hand here. Maybe thinking about attacking.
With my 1/2?
Yeah.
I mean, I think against Curiosity, the idea of letting the token potentially connect for an entire card, just and I'm getting 2 damage out of that, but Jason's at 22. I mean, we'll have to whittle down those 22 life points eventually somehow, but we can do those in bigger chunks. But it looks like we might not get a choice at all, as Go for Throat takes down the Swiss Spear.
Yeah. Shieldred's the draw. And
Well, that's an even bigger problem. Yeah.
We have Kaito as well.
Jayson about to be up a game on the draw in the worst matchup here with all to play for.
Jayson lining up. Do I want to main face as Kaito and tap down and push? Can I do that and Shieldred? Shieldred. And I'm going to say the big difference, I think, between this match so far and the one we saw in the Swiss was Ray just had 2 or 3 creatures in the early game, and all of those, even on the Molda 5. And in this one, we just didn't have anything, right? There was no squeeze between, interacting with the threats Jayson is presenting and applying pressure, right? For Jayson. Jayson just got to kind of replay Preacher every turn, and it was like kind of frustrating, but it wasn't the end of the world. Creature attacks, gets a card, gonna go up a life, lose 1, then gain 2 from Shieldred. Soulstone Sanctuary in the hand here as well for Jayson. If we ever somehow run out of gas, we've got a bunch of creature lands we can activate. Losing a life down to 21 and gonna play Kaito. And we have done damage this turn, so we can 0. Yeah, our hand's all lands. Go for the throat in a land.
Ray soldiering on, but can't do that indefinitely in the face of Shieldred and Preacher, even if you have the Warrior Spirit.
Yeah. Definitely not a spot where you're gonna concede. But
well, you say that. Definitely
well,
a spot I would concede.
I don't know. You draw the stock up, you at least take a look, right? Yeah, you gotta
Sure.
see. I mean, we both know that there's basically nothing we can do. A lot of the cards that we have that could have got us out of the spot we've used earlier, things like chaining into the Flood Moss, pushing damage through, but it is worth at least taking a look, Skipoo, see if there's something maybe we forgot. And worst comes to worst, we can just die on the next turn. Jayson has a ton of pressure in play between all these creatures, the Soul Stones, the Kaito. Has a lot of lands in hand and a kill spell. The kill spell is actually pretty big for making sure we actually get across the finish line. All right, here's our last into the Flood Maw, I think. It's going to bounce Shieldred. And we're going to attack the Kaito for 4. It will be assigning lethal if you don't block, but if you block and cast a spell, it will still do lethal. Since we did not equip the new monk, we kept the old one. That was big. Jayson, just going to block. Ray's going to cast Opt. That way we can trample over and kill Kaito. Take your card. And now Kaito's dead. Vampire's dead. Raise up a life for the exchange. And Jayson, pretty close to lethal here. I mean, can animate the Soulstone, attack, and then play Shieldred and force Ray to have an answer. Oh, apparently Ray's life's at 8. Pardon us, we had the life totals wrong. That's a big difference. Okay, game we just got easier, Dom. You have to admit, we went up 3 life.
Okay, now we'll just do that a few more times, and then the game will be close again, maybe.
Our other match is playing, by the way. We're going to get them on camera if we can, but we're having the matches both going, and we're going to bring you the finals. Omniscience versus something going on over there. I think it is not Cutter, but I could be oh, it is Cutter actually. Sorry, yeah. So the 2 Cutter players versus the 2 not. As we're gonna activate Soulstone Sanctuary, attack, trigger our Preacher, draw a card. It's another Preacher of the Schism. All right, Ray's gonna jump in front of the Preacher, save 4. Soulstone's gonna hit for 3, back to 5. Now goes Ray. Card in hand for Jayson. It's go for the throat. And here comes Shieldred the Apocalypse. And a land for turn. And I think it's disc. Oh, no, we have enough cards in hand. We're safe. All right, let's see what Ray can do. Remember, Ray is at 5. Our life totals are a little bit behind. Sorry about that technical difficulty. Now should be down to 3 from the Soulstone hitting. And here's Thundertrap Trainer. It whiffed earlier. Sleight of hand.
And yeah, I don't know how we permanently deal with the shielded, right? There's no Fire Annihilation style card in the main deck here. Ray's already used several Into the Floodmoors, and even finding the next one would only delay the inevitable for a turn at best.
Yeah, you can do something like level up your talent and then, cast the End of the Flood Maw on the end of turn to bounce the Shieldred. But also, if you're doing all that, like, how are you winning, right? Like, maybe if you had multiple Steel Cutters, like, it's just a very, very tough spot.
Yeah,
But,
the Shielded also just padding Jayson's life total every turn, so it's going to be even harder to somehow stitch together 25 points of damage.
all right, well, I think Deep Cavern Bat's going to be the beginning of the end here because Jayson's going to see, is it safe for me to cast all these Go for the Throats I've been sandbagging for a while? And if it is, that's going to be lethal. Right. Ray has a Torch the Tower. That's going to answer the bat. Gets a Prowess trigger. All right, we did have the last Into the Flood Maw. And another Quarry Steel Cutter and a Sleight of Hand. So if Jayson just casts some Go for the Throats and then raid the Flood Maws, we're alive? Barely? I think this is really showing Dom just how tough this matchup can be. Because even though Jayson's kind of ahead and has been so, Ray is still just like holding on. And you can imagine with like a slightly better start how much closer things might be. As an attack with everything is going to trigger the Preacher, we have more life total, gain a life for it. Jayson picked up Duress, something we might do at the end of combat and all this here to clean up the last card in hand. We're going to go for the throat, the Quarry Steel Cuttered token. Jayson passing priority to Ray. Ray can into the Flood Maw. If we do, it will trigger Flurry, which will get us a Monk. All right, we're going to bounce the Preacher. So we can double block Shieldred, chump block Soulstone. Jayson has a Go for the Throat, though. So that's going to end in disaster. Right, go for the throat, taking down a monk. Force jump blocks. And then it looks like we maybe have a bunch of islands, so maybe we can't duress. A small reprieve for Ray, but Dom, it's like you've been saying for a bit now. How are we going to keep answering this Shieldred? We're taking two. We need to pick up into the Flood Maw. We've definitely cast all four this game. Oh, there is a black land hiding out there. Yeah, I like this for Jayson. Corey Steelcutter isn't going to do it. Yep. And Ray's going to pack it up. All right. And we're moving on to game two. It felt like, Ray was holding on for dear life there, did everything that they could, but wasn't enough to overcome the good start we had there from the Dimir midrange deck.
Okay, let's take a look at these sideboards again. Refresh our memories on what both players are bringing to the table here. We have that little graphic queued up.
There we go. Okay, so looking at CFT's sideboard, Ral, Hearth Elemental, a couple of those look pretty nice. I have a Braids, Scorching Shot kills Shieldred. Anything else jumping out to you, Dom?
Just the stuff that kills the bigger creatures. Heart Elemental is grindy. If you think the bounce effects are nice, I could see that this town coming in as a fifth. Good in the longer games. You can imagine bouncing their thing and also resetting your talent, getting that loop going, and then probably shaving down on some of the more conditional. Monstrous Rage, definitely a Braid is this is not the matchup for. And then I know we had a debate about Ral before, which I don't think we saw in the post-war games from Ray in the end the first time around, but I wonder if it was there the whole time and we haven't seen it, or if that judgment has changed at all.
Yeah, I'm curious to see as well, sort of what the plan is in this regard. And this is one of the cool things about the Is It deck that we've talked a bit about this weekend, but it's very customizable and you can play the games you want to play. And I think CFT's deck is really showing that off here today. Things like two trainers in the main, two monstrous rage, right? Three Draycatcher, the two of braids, the four flood maws. We've watched lots of feature matches where people had, two or three flood maw, but never the full four, and everyone else we've seen has four monstrous rage. So a lot of customization available to this deck. There are no sacred cows except Corey Steelcutter. That is the thing we've always seen for. We even see have some players have stock up in the sideboard, So lots of things you can do with this deck. Love it or hate it, it is cool that we have a deck like this that is the best deck. So often, Dom, you and I have commentated tournaments where it's something like energy, right? And you and I are talking about the one or two differences in the main and the two or three sideboard cards they played that fight the matchup this way instead of that way, But this deck does have a lot of cool expression to it.
Definitely. And then on the Jameer side, second Gix's command, definitely going to join the party there. And Filigree Silex, we mentioned, as a way to clean up a bunch of ragtag otters and monks and everything else. Given time, can clean up the permanents making those as well. And then you could debate other cards, I think, but those are the only slam dunks in my book.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think I could totally believe lots of arguments, on whatever you wanted to do, but I really want those cards that you mentioned, especially Gix. So Filigree Silex, excuse me. Gotta get those in my deck, and then after that, I'm figuring it out. And this blue black deck, we've been talking about it some this weekend. It put up, a good finish here with the top eight. Kind of cut through a lot of the non-cutter decks. Did beat a cutter deck in the first round of top eight as well. We are in the semifinals right now. And when things kind of line up like that and you're able to pick them apart just enough where their draw doesn't fully come together, maybe even you're on the play, once you do get your things like Shieldred and Curiosity and Kaito going, that stuff can really just take over a game very quickly. And it's impressive that that game actually took as long as it did turn wise to actually end. I'll tell you one end though, Dom. That's you and I covering this RC until we figure out who our champion is going to be. We're going to bring you all the rounds today. Thanks to Face to Face Games for putting on the paper coverage of this event. You want to follow along on the Twitch channel here, that way you don't miss any of the future RCs as well. And check out face2face.com for all your Magic the Gathering needs.
Absolutely. It's really gratifying to be able to help bring this to people. And certainly, the people who get like their first feature match, let's say, maybe it's their first RC even, that first feature under the camera, you care a lot about. You tell your friends to go watch. Like it means a lot. And it's also great educationally as well, right? You can go back and see what mistakes you made, get other input on the match, and then it is a great studying tool as well. So from every angle, I'm glad that we get to bring this to people, and we have the best still to come here.
Yep. Honored to help be a part of bringing it to you as well. Deep Cavern Bat coming down into the Flood Maw, Torch the Tower, Stock Up, and Ral. Dom,
There's Ral. Okay.
Yeah, so Ral made the cut. Stock Up's going to go underneath, it looks like. What I was going to say about Deep Cavern Bat, about 9 months ago, Deep Cavern Bat was everywhere. A lot of players would have argued one of the best cards in the format. Now a fringe player.
Yeah. And part of that is just the black mid-range decks in general being fringe players or having to pivot around to do different things, right? So if you're this black-white pixie deck, let's say, you don't want to be locking down your own Deep Cavern Bat or anything like that. But Ray does opt into Torture Tower to kill the bat, get back the stock up, and make a monk and attack. So this is more how Ray wants to draw it up here. And this Demir deck, it can do a lot of things, deal with a lot of problems. The one thing it can't do categorically is permanently kill an artifact. So the color is in, and Jayson just has to beat the color straight up. I guess, hypothetically, if Tidebinder came in, then you can find a chance to stack that. But even that against all of the bounce and torches and stuff is unreliable. So the color is in, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, Duress coming down. Interesting Duress. Opt was the unknown. So very similar to actually what we had a second ago. Stock Up is always pretty tempting. Ral is a really hard threat to beat if it hits the board. But gonna go for the Stock Up. Maybe assign 2 something like Spell Pierce in hand. And hoping for the Ral to come down. Maybe wanting to make it harder for Ray to just trigger Flurry. Starting off with an Opt here. Trigger Prowess. The orange dice and the orange logo. It's just funny how comically unlucky we've gotten with dice this weekend. Players pulled out like blue dice with their mono blue deck and just things like that.
Look, it doesn't need to be this way. Get those big chunky dice that they use in the PT feature matches and stuff, and those are unbeatable. There's no flaws there.
All right, so Ray hit a land, and the card in hand is something we couldn't cast. That gives Jayson some idea about what the unknown could be. As something like a sleight of hand, we have to imagine Ray would cast and get more of this cutter action going.
Yeah, so maybe a land, maybe something reactive potentially. No counter spells of sorts, and the old spell pierce here and there is only 1 mana, so it does narrow down the range quite considerably of what it could be. It could be one of these red cards earmarked for a preacher or shielded or something similar. And nothing that Ray could cast in response to the cut down to grow the monk if so inclined.
Get a map here. Passing the turn, holding up negate still. Jayson does not want the Ral to sneak under. Sleight of hand getting cast. And I think Ray knows something is up back from, the duress and everything. Lots of times you might have seen just, Ral get slammed. But here's Corey Steelcutter number 2. That's triggering Flurry regardless. Negate on this. You mentioned before, Dom, we can't get artifacts off the board. But we can at least attack a Planeswalker down in theory. As we're going to attack for 2 here.
Yeah, and Jayson does have Shielded in hand. So there's a face-up Floodmore. So you're going to have to do it twice at least. But it gives you something to play towards.
Yeah. Jayson also has a Preacher in hand along with a land. Might see a little crack in the map to start the turn. Filigree Silex. All
Mm.
right.
So that's the one exception. Given time, that can deal with a cutter or with a stream of color tokens.
Yeah, also makes Ral a little less scary, the otters. You won't be able to block. One of the hard parts about Ral is that, it gains so much loyalty and protects itself. All right,
This
so
is interesting. So Jayson goes for Preacher instead of Shielded. I think the logic being, if Ray decides to bounce it, it's the same either way. But if Ray has one of those removal spells, right, like a Scorching Shot, you would rather have the Preacher fall to that in all likelihood. Although that said, if you're keeping the Silex off the map, maybe you'd almost rather have the Shielded die so you can replay Preacher and Silex in a turn, and they're going to be a little better at stabilizing.
yeah, I agree. That does seem to be a little cleaner. I wonder if Jason's trying to like bluff Spell Pierce or something. Because you do want to work through the Flood Maw.
Yeah, and so Ray has to think about that possibility, right? Ends
Yep.
up firing off a Floodmore in a turn anyway, taking him on to do it. Preacher back to hand.
Slams.
Slams Ral,
Yep. The jig is up.
saying, yeah, I don't believe you. Here is my Ral.
I'm curious if we'll get a minus here. I think there's a red card hand. It might be a mountain, could be a torch the tower. But we're going to do the tick up.
Yeah, there is Restless Reef on the other side, so the Ral would be somewhat exposed to that, and also, of course, the Spyglass Siren in that case.
Well, that's I was saying like maybe land into torch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a little risky. I was just curious. There's some card in hand I can't quite make it out. Ray keeps them
It's
close
going to
to the
be,
table.
though, with the Shieldred, that was the unknown card, means once that comes down, it's going to be harder to minus Ral without without paying the iron price.
Mm.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow, it's so good. I know we talked about this earlier in the broadcast a little bit. Ral, maybe my favorite planeswalker of all time now. Just so much fun to play with.
After Ral Monsoon Mage, nothing can stop it being my least favorite of all time. I think that's locked in.
You're welcome. Shieldred coming down.
Yeah, please direct all of your Ral related complaints to one Mason Clark, who's
I'll
not
edit.
me, despite what some people have argued. So Ray will take 2 hit down to 15. And this is the Shieldred test we've been seeing for 2.5 years or more at this point, right? Can you answer the Shieldred? Because if not, doesn't really matter what else is going on. It's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah. It's interesting too, from Ray's perspective, you maybe need to like cast a spell so your Ral ideally lives, and then minus to actually find something that answers the Shieldred. Because postboard we do have some answers to the card proper. Okay, yeah, we're just minusing straight up.
Right. A really big Night's Whisper.
Yeah.
We'll take 6.
Discard 2. This is a big sign that this Shieldred is a huge problem.
Yeah. Now that said, Jason's at 10 if those life totals are accurate. So if Ray does find one of the many bounce spells or the Scorching Shot or so on, can play that, play another spell, trigger the color again. I mean, Jayson could die this turn, or could be in danger of dying anytime soon.
All right. Did we discard the Scorching? Oh,
Yeah,
shot?
which that has to be somewhat terrifying, right?
Yeah, that's you're dead. You're dead.
Yeah.
Torch
Now, Floodmore, this town.
that. Yeah, Flood Mod
Yeah,
this.
okay.
Trigger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you see Jayson picks it up and attack with everything.
Jason about to pick up the rest of his cards too, I expect.
Yeah. And we talked about this the turn prior, the idea of Silex, into Preacher, right? As like, the follow-up turn. This could have kind of happened, right? We could have popped the Silex before it got bounced and got some of the tokens, but Yeah, Jason's just dead here, and you see it again. This is kind of what happened in the Swiss when these two played, except I would say the game was never that close for Jason.
Yeah.
Jason had that like advantage at any point here, and I think this is kind of closer to how the matchup plays out typically.
Yeah, so that game, Ray passed the test, and we're going to get a third game as a result. For all the marbles, a solid in the finals, a solid worlds, and a shot at even more money and glory here.
Hmm. Also, do want to give props there. I think it's really hard it's hard to even imagine for some players to like -6 a RAL in the face of that Shieldred, right? Like it's like, okay, I might whiff, I might just lose the game on the spot. If I tick up my RAL, then I have a couple turns. I may do it later. CFT Ray was like, no, I minus here. I can win the game. I'm gonna go for it. I think I'm a favorite, and pays off.
So, any final changes you would consider on the play or on the draw, sorry, versus on the play?
I
No,
would
on the
ask
play versus on the draw, heading into game 3.
ask Ray for the deck list, go back in time, submit that. No, I'm just kidding. No big differences, I think, here. I can totally believe that, Jayson has something that they want to do differently, right? Like that's believable to me. I don't think I have a nuanced take enough. I could totally buy like, yeah, I want Fairy Mastermind on the play as a one of because of, cards like Opt or whatever. I don't know. It's something that I could totally believe if someone had a good reasoning. I have nothing in that regard. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, I got nothing either. I could be talked maybe into the tie binders a little more play,
Hmm.
just as a
Yeah.
somewhat copium fueled answer to Corey Silcana, but that's really about it. It might be more a case of what cards in the main deck do you know you want to cut,
Yeah.
and other than the Kaito, like this is not the matchup for that card. Otherwise, you kind of play most of these cards because implicitly they've passed the is it test already, right? If
Hmm.
they're totally unsalvageable against is it, they can't really be in the deck. So naturally, you're just not going to have that many cards.
Yeah. Let's take a look over at CFT's deck.
And yeah, I wonder if they want to mix things up at all on the draw here for game 3. I can see a card like Ral, for example,
Mhm.
getting a bit worse on the draw, right? It's harder to defend. Opponent
Yeah.
might be overpowering you on board already by then. Maybe it's still good enough anyway, but that's the kind of thought process.
Makes sense to me. I easily imagine like you have two rounds on the play, one on the draw. Something like that. I'd check out. I buy what you're selling.
Verge go for Jayson, and Swift
Uh,
for Ray. Oh, yeah.
Verge's really powerful land cycle.
It depends who you ask. They already are,
Yeah, they're clearly not weak. I think we can agree with that. Maybe not. I don't know. This could be a debate to talk about later. As Deep Cover Back comes down, two lands, Torch the Tower, double sleight of hand, stock up.
Yeah, this is a classic bat dilemma of there's a removal spell there, right? So if you don't take the removal spell, the opponent can just kill the bat, get back whatever you took, and do that instead. But if you take the removal spell, you maybe don't take the thing you actually want. So sometimes you'll leave them with removal, knowing that they can just kill it, but deciding, hey, I'll make you use your mana and sequence a bit awkwardly to do that. This is not one of those spots though, right? Because Ray has so much else to do with their mana, or these one mana cantrips, or these cheap plays. So at best, it's going to be a minor nuisance, and you'd rather just take that torch out of commission for good.
All right. Ray sleight of hands. First one took something pretty quickly. I think it was land versus spell. This one takes a second, grabs a card, and now has a 3/4 Swift Spirit to pow in.
Yeah. Ray has the face up, stock up, ready to go. What kind of things do you think Ray is looking for right now with light, and if that stock up resolves with that as well?
I'm so sorry, I disconnected there for a second. What did you say?
I'm asking what kind of stuff do you think Ray is looking for? We might get an answer now
Sure.
with the duress from Jayson. And
Yeah,
looks like a great is still in the deck from Ray. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. It makes me think Ray really values just like keeping the board kind of clear, right? A second duress, second stock up gone. I
Wow.
imagine,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyway, before Jason so rudely interrupted us, what were you what were you
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to say?
no, you're good, you're good. I was gonna say, I imagine you want like talents a card I can imagine us looking for.
Mm. Well, good news,
Cutter.
Jason.
Yes, yeah, just the things that actually put pressure. This is what I was talking about. When we look, this is
Mm.
our second time seeing this matchup play out. When Ray has a couple threats, even little ones, not even getting prowessed up, but forcing Jayson to kind of split the difference on like developing versus answering, it's much harder for Jayson. And when Jayson isn't under pressure or real pressure, it's very easy just to be like, all right, play this preacher. Yeah, you into the flood mommy, whatever. Play it again. Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? We need to be chipping away and setting up a big burst turn, very similar to what we saw at the end of game number 2 there.
Yeah, really nice sequence from Ray so far. And even if Jason has one of these big roadblocks, right? Preacher, Shieldred, there's a face up Floodmore, so Ray will bounce that and crunch in for even more damage, and then back in the same spot next turn, hoping there's no second copy or no level talent. But if you don't do anything that forces an issue, or if Ray finds a land, they can level talent, get back a stock up. That's pretty scary. And if Ray didn't find a land, well, they found a spell, which might also be scary. So yeah, and that's the land. So
Mhm.
talent goes to 2. I assume stock up, get added to the hand very quickly. So yeah,
Yeah.
Jason cleared the board in a sense, right? But now is going to be outground unless uh, he can change the terms of engagement soon.
Yeah. And this is one of the big things we haven't talked about in this matchup. If Stormfish's talent hits level 3, that does win the game, right? Like just making every spell also make an otter is just really hard to beat. Now, we're a
Yeah,
bit away from that.
it's funny because in my experience, if you're leveling it, it's because you don't have spells to cast instead a lot of the time. So if I were to cast an opt and that found a side of hand it's rather you take a turn off, spend 6 to level, and then have a full on empty the Warren's turn after that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I would say it comes up a surprising amount, but it's not a ton, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Ray stocks up, will Floodmore the Preacher to delay it for a turn. See if Jason has anything better to do than just going for that again. There is a bat.
All right. Corey
To
still cutter,
four.
scorching shot, sleight of
Oh,
hand.
yeah, that color was under Ray's hand at first, so I didn't see it, but that's not a great thing to uncover.
Hmm. Yeah, that is a scary one, and we're in the classic bat dilemma again, right? So
Yeah,
Jayson, I think the best bet here is taking a torch to the tower. That way, your Shieldred maybe lives or your Preacher lives. If you make the scorching shot, have to go after the bat. But
right. If there's 2 removal spells, it often makes sense to uh, leave them or leave them with the better one, so they have to use that on the bat if they don't find another, and then they have the worst one left over. Now sometimes they can see through that ruse and just not care about the bat, and then they have the scorching shot still for your big thing. So that's the issue here, right? Is
Mhm.
you know so Jason making the play that kind of forces Ray to take a certain script, but now he's out of cards, so Ray can untap, torch the bat, and do a quick first check. Yes, we have our red sources. Shot the preacher if we want, or maybe just cutter now and slight,
Yeah,
and then prepare to topple the whole house of cards from Jason next turn.
yeah. If you have land, you get to go land, especially a red one, right? Like Mountain was an insane draw here if we had it. Looks like we're gonna start things off with torching. At least that's what Ray went for. Yeah, you're seeing Ray take a second. I've noticed this from this is maybe like my 10th ish time getting the honor to cover Ray. Sometimes the play gets really hard and they just lean back for a second. They're just like, all right, recenter. What am I trying to do here? How am I winning this game? How's my opponent winning this game? How do I navigate from here? And Ray's very good at solving these puzzles. Looks like Cutter might be the start of this puzzle solve, or maybe this card that's face down in our hand. We keep touching it as well. Gonna torch down the bat, trigger, cutter, pass the turn.
Yeah. So there's a window here, right? Jayson gets a draw step and actually would get a token if he attacked, not a card, which I think he would prefer. So if this card is, a duress or something, creature gets to live. If this is another big thing that demands an answer, right? Second creature, shielded,
It's
or maybe
negate.
Gix's command to get it to 6 toughness out of range. That
Mhm.
there are new problems that could come up here, right?
Yeah, we drew a negate.
Okay. So that's
So
not the worst, but the problem is Ray is just going to attempt the card that you have to counter, but that's also going to bring a monk with it and make the other monk bigger, and you see where this is going.
yeah. All right, pretty quick play here. Monster Swift Spear immediately into Scorching Shot. That's going to trigger Flurry, trigger Prowess. Ray does lose a life and negate.
But now also has an option of okay, so while moving this over, interesting. It's going to say if Ray kept the cutter on the original, could cast a sleight of hand and then would be attacking with a 4/4. Decides to just keep the sleight to proc the cutter and everything else next turn.
Jayson still can't really start attacking. It's going to pass the turn.
Yeah. So even if that unknown card is a blank, right? This is a very precarious situation. If it's anything but a blank, well, you can fill in the rest.
Sleight of hand. Pretty quick there. We've seen this from Ray before. Can sort of see the finish line. Play picks up quickly. So it looks like Storm Chaser's Talent. That's going to trigger Flurry, trigger Prowess.
Yeah, that one's not very beatable.
Yeah. Also makes it so we get another rebuy on, I don't know, maybe Stalk Up, maybe into the Flood Maw for lethal next turn. A couple options.
Sure.
All right. And we have so many Prowess creatures. They're all 3 power with the new token being at 2.
More lands being tapped. Here's opt now. So pretty quickly, all of these power creatures are going to get to 4 power. So the creature can't even eat anything in combat necessarily.
Yeah. It's going to have to be a trade and a forced trade too, as it looks like we're currently attacking for lethal. Xaxes, a little over Xaxes, excuse me. I think Jayson did a good job navigating this game, but
Yeah, this is why, right?
Mhm.
This is the gamble. You beat most other things, but prowess is tough, especially someone who has a lot of prowess with that prowess deck.
Yeah, Gix's command needs to be the draw here. I think Filigree Silex could do a good job. It's going to land.
There it is.
Congratulations to Ray Zhang moving on to the finals.